Good evening, everyone. We're here. I'm on Magoffin Street. Today, I'm going to take you on a tour. It's actually like about an hour tour, a self-walking tour. The last time I did a blog here, I got this pamphlet. There's actually this pamphlet right here, and it's called the Magoffin Historic District Walking Tour. It's about an hour tour that takes you around the neighborhood of Magoffin. You know, this neighborhood was at the time was starting to flourish, and this was before the railroad arrived. Well, the Southern Pacific railroads were on the north part of Magoffin, and then the Texas and Pacific Railroad yards were in the south part of the Magoffin area, the Magoffin district. Well, because of those railroads surrounding the area, this little resident area never flourished. You know, there was a lot of beautiful homes being built at the time in the late 1800s and the early 1900s. Well, a lot of business leaders and a lot of companies started to bring businesses here and factories pretty much a little bit east of Magoffin. So this area pretty much did not grow as a resident area. So the wealthier people, they had the money to move. You know, in the early 1900s, they started to build the neighborhood of Sunset Heights and Kern Place. So a lot of these people moved to those areas, you know, and that's where they started to settle in El Paso. Well, in 1985, El Paso City Council, you know, they created the Magoffin Historic District on February 19th, 1985. And pretty much it was to preserve this little area, this neighborhood, so it wouldn't be demolished by future developers, because this area has a lot of history that belongs to El Paso. But right across the street behind me is the famous Magoffin home. You know, this home was built by Joseph Magoffin and Octavia Magoffin. Well, I've done a blog a few months ago about the Magoffin home. You know, it's a very beautiful home. It's a crown jewel here in the southwest of El Paso. El Paso, you should be proud of this home. Lots of history. You know, I've said before, you know, the Magoffins were prominent leaders. They're pretty much settled the area of El Paso, pretty much the city of El Paso, along with other civic leaders at the time. Octavia Magoffin was pretty much in charge of furnishing the home. She always had the home clean. You know, she had beautiful furniture. You know, pretty much the home was always clean because they were always hosting parties, dances. You know, the biggest room is a hall, which is pretty much in the middle of the home. You know, it's the biggest room. Is actually also the coolest room during the summer when you open up the front door and the rear door, and that's where they held their dances and their parties. Well, the Magoffins had parties often because they were prominent leaders here in El Paso, and Joseph Magoffin, his idea was to bring utilities, to bring businesses to El Paso, to settle El Paso as a city. You know, back in the day, before Joseph Magoffin, when James Wiley Magoffin, which is Joseph Magoffin's father, settled El Paso, he started a settlement of Magoffinsville, and pretty much that settlement was pretty much like a stop for people that were traveling into Mexico from St. Louis, from Chicago, to do their business dealings. Well, when Joseph Magoffin moved to El Paso and he created this home right here, his goal was to make El Paso into a city. You know, he brought utilities, businesses started to thrive here, and we owe a lot to Joseph Magoffin because of that. Well, Joseph Magoffin was a son of James Wiley Magoffin. He also had a brother, Samuel Magoffin. Well, James Wiley Magoffin, when he came to El Paso, he acquired a lot of land. When I did the tour here at the Magoffin home, the tourist told me that Joseph Magoffin owned land all the way from the Franklin Mountains, which I think you can see behind me over here, the Franklin Mountains, and his land reached all the way to the Rio Grande. During the Civil War, he sided with the Confederacy, and after the war he lost his lands. The Union took the lands away from him. Well, after James Wiley Magoffin's death, Joseph Magoffin came back to El Paso. He acquired his dad's lands back. He didn't get all of it back, but he got quite a few. Well, when Joseph Magoffin built his home right behind me, it was surrounded by about 200 acres. They pretty much grew their own crops. They had cattle, they had goats, they had horses, and the water, they received their water from canals that were connected to the Rio Grande. And they were a self-sufficient family. This was a self-sufficient home and farmland, I guess ranch land if you want to put it that way. It was also surrounded by orchards. They grew a lot of crops. Okay, across the street from the famous Magoffin home, you have a home that used to belong to Dr. Augustus Justice. Dr. Augustus Justice was a surgeon during the Civil War who moved to El Paso and established medical practice in 1901. Well, he died and his wife still kept on living here, and his wife rented this home to several people. One of those people that she rented this home to was to Enrique C. Llorente. Enrique C. Llorente worked for the Mexican consul under President Francisco Madero during the Mexican Revolution. And during the Mexican Revolution, he started an espionage agency, which he was in charge of about 100 agents, 100 spies during the Mexican Revolution. Well, now this home is a visitor center for the Magoffin home in the little historic district of this area. Here we have two portraits. The portrait of Dr. August or Augustus Landor Justice and his wife, Estela Leveig. Born in 1841 and died in 1907, Dr. Justice was born in Virginia and as a child grew up in Christian County, Kentucky. He attended medical school in Virginia. When the Civil War broke out, Dr. Justice joined the staff of Dr. W.M. Yandell Sr. Together they worked as physicians in the Confederate Army. During the war, he was wounded twice in the lung and hip. After the war, Dr. Justice attended Northwestern University in Chicago, where he received his degree in 1874. He was president of the Denver Medical Board, practiced medicine in San Francisco from 1875 through 1881. In 1881, he moved to El Paso to establish a successful medical practice located in the Coles building located at the corner of Oregon and San Antonio Street. In 1891, Dr. Justice married Estela Leveig in New Orleans. She was a member of one of the aristocratic old Creole families of New Orleans. They had 2 sons and 1 daughter. Dr. Justice died of Nefertiti's in 1907 and buried at Evergreen Cemetery. His wife Estela lived in El Paso at 1117 Magoffin, across the street of the Magoffins for many years. Octavia Magoffin, wife of Joseph Magoffin, died in 1906. According to the Justice family members, Estela and Joseph Magoffin were well acquainted. They fell in love and Joseph asked her to marry him. Apparently, Estela's sisters talked her out of it. Okay, right here, I think this is San Jacinto Plaza right here, this little area, this little rendition of El Paso. By the way the street moves, curves, I think that is San Jacinto Plaza. This is where the Plaza Theater should be right now. And right here is where the Plaza Hotel should be, or where it is right now. For a lot of you who were born and raised in El Paso, you guys know El Paso, how it looks like, how the downtown area looks. Now you can see this is pretty much a map of the downtown El Paso area, and a little bit east where the Magoffin home is right there. Well, you can see pretty much downtown El Paso, but look at how close it is to the border. There's a river, the Rio Grande right there, and that river is what is the border of the United States and Mexico. Okay, I believe that's Joseph Magoffin, and I'm not sure if that's his father, James Wiley. I'm not sure, but I'm assuming those 2 kids are Joseph Magoffin's kids. Directly across the street is the Monastery of Perpetual Adoration. In 1927, the Sisters of the Order of Perpetual Adoration moved to this residence. They arrived in El Paso in 1925 after fleeing Mexico to avoid religious persecution. Directly across the street is the San Jacinto School, located on 1216 Olive Avenue. San Jacinto School was opened November 20th, 1905. It was named in honor of the Battle of San Jacinto. The school is a brick structure with 3 stories high with 14 classrooms. Its primary purpose was to teach of students of Mexican descent. They were the primary students They taught vocational skills and training shops, for example, sewing, domestic science. And 1976, it became an adult learning center in El Paso for the El Paso Independent School District, and I think it still remains as that. But as you can see, over the years, it's pretty much the same structure. Nothing has been added, but I think I've seen old pictures of this building, and over the years, the rooftop, and the very rooftop, there used to be like some kind of structure on the top, and I don't see it anymore. They must have taken it off, but pretty much the same building. And right now I'm in the corner of Tornillo Street and San Antonio Street, and right behind me is the Art Deco pump station of Waco well number 17A. Now, it reflects the old architecture of the 1930s, and originally it was part of the original El Paso Waterworks. Currently it is owned by the El Paso Water Utilities, and it still works today. It supplements water for El Paso, but it's still active today. So pretty much just check out the beautiful architecture of the 1930s. Water pump which is still active today. I'm still in San Antonio Street. I'm on 1210 East San Antonio Avenue. Now this home directly across the street from me is it used to belong to Chris Fox. Chris Fox was a well-known El Pasoan who served in World War I. He was the El Paso County Sheriff. He went to El Paso High School, graduated from El Paso High School, and he also helped organize the Fort Bliss Centennial in 1948. But now this home is actually the home of a law firm here in El Paso. Very beautiful home, very beautiful architecture. This is the home of former Chris Fox. Directly across the street, in the corner of Olive Avenue and St. Vrain Street, is a home of Captain Thomas Jeremiah Bill. Jeremiah Bill, he served in the Civil War. He was born in Georgia. He earned his law degree at Cumberland University in Tennessee. He moved to El Paso, and he built this home in 1882. It is said that this home is one of the oldest wooden residences of El Paso, and it was built out of California redwood trees. This home is for sale right now. From the outside, just pretty much looking at the landscaping, it looks dilapidated, but I did some research on this home, and it's been refurbished on the inside. It's so if you want to buy a historic home, this is the chance to buy it. Beautiful home, beautiful architecture. We are approaching downtown El Paso. I'm going to turn on Virginia Street. There's the new federal U.S. courthouse right there. It was built, I think, in 2010. I'm not sure, but I just wanted to show you the neighborhood. Pretty much the neighborhood. I'm going to drive around the Magoffin Historic District. Now this historic district tour, it should be about an hour walk if you decide to walk it. As you can see, okay, right now we are approaching St. Vrain Street. We are approaching the Magoffin home, in just a few minutes, and Dr. Augustus Justice home. Well, as you can see, this neighborhood, it's kind of dilapidated, and how I said earlier, with the construction of the railroad and north of Magoffin Historic District and south of the Magoffin Historic District, this neighborhood never flourished as a residence area. Businesses started to flourish, factories, started to being built just a little bit east of this area. So this neighborhood never really flourished as a residential area. So a lot of the people, the wealthier people that lived in this area, and like in the early 1900s, they started to move to Sunset Heights and Kern Place. And that latter area also has its unique history. A lot of the homes built in that area were built by Trust and Trust architectural firm, a well-known firm in the late 1800s and early 1900s here in El Paso. So as you can see, the little neighborhood right here, El Paso decided to make this a historic district, you know, for the well-being of the neighborhood. You know, so some of these old buildings are very old, that were built prior to 1900 and also built in the early 1900s. You know, and pretty much the city just wanted to preserve these buildings. Well, all this land back in the late 1800s was still farmland. There was still farmland here, and very few people were settling here in this area. Up until when Joseph Magoffin became mayor of El Paso, when he wanted to industrialize El Paso, he brought many utilities to El Paso. This land, this little area right here, pretty much became centralized, commercialized for businesses. As you can see right now, there's a lot of businesses right now, a lot of old homes, and a lot of new buildings that were built in the 50s, 40s, you know, and even 60s. So as we're approaching right now, that's the new U.S. courthouse. There's a new U.S. courthouse. But yes, downtown El Paso was also farmland. It was actually owned by Juan Maria Ponce de Leon, and then it was later bought by Benjamin Franklin Coons, became Coons Ranch. But today, I guess this concludes my blog for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you guys have any ideas of any future blogs you want me to film and talk about, leave some comments below. You know, El Paso is a very small city. It has a lot of history, but thank you.